I've always liked the Dark Mechanicum. Adeptus Mechanicus models are at their best when they have those strange proportioned body horror vibes going on, and their nastier counterparts to the Dark Mechanicum are said to carry that on even further. I say said to carry it on because as far as I'm aware, they've never had a single model, minus Chaos Obliterators, which are supposedly the products of viruses the DarkMech created, and Chaos Knights, some of whom are technically aligned to the Dark Mechanicum, but I don't count either of those as dedicated models. The Adeptus Mechanicus are ruthlessly ambitious mad scientists trespassing in the domain of God in the search of personal power. The Dark Mechanicum are those same guys without any of the restraints or restrictions imposed on them by the Imperium. I'd love to make some theoretical Dark Mechanicum models and get a look at what they might look like if Games Workshop ever chooses to bring a real model line about. As a sort of evil Adeptus Mechanicus, they'll need to have the same basic design aspects as the regular Mechanicum, but with a darker and sinister flavor. This means mechanical limbs, strange proportions, and dubiously consensual hiring practices. They're frequently portrayed as more mad scientist types to the Adeptus Mechanicus techno-zealots, going mad with power after they delve into forbidden technologies like AI or chaos sorcery. In fact, I'd hazard that the only thing saving the galaxy from the Dark Mechanicum's combined power is the fact that their power is never combined. These insular clades of egotistical mad scientists can't work together to save their lives, and spend about as much time doing little petty things to sabotage one another as they spend actually building new inventions. To start my basic infantry model, I grabbed a house cod or torso from Davik Designs and cut him just above the waist chain using the bisect tool in edit mode. Then, I brought in a set of legs from the Maker's Cult's Dark Techno Troopers line and scaled the two of them to match one another. Thankfully, they both have this cloth-wrapped appearance, which makes them blend together. Then, I wanted to change his look a little bit so he looked more stooped over and animalistic. He's too straight and rigid right now. Go in, add a single bone, and then extrude from the end of that bone repeatedly until you have multiple, as many as you'd like. In this case, I'm just giving him a basic sort of spine rig, nothing fancy, because all I really need to give him is a hunched over appearance. Then, go in, click your bone and your object you want to blend it to, and then click right-click, Parent, Parent with automatic weights. This will have Blender automatically assign a weight to each bone, which is how much of the model around it is moved when that bone is moved. Remember, only do this with soft materials. If you try and bend a hard material, it'll become obvious that it's been edited in editing software, and it just won't look good. For arms, I brought in these 3 arms from the Maker's Cult's Dark Techno Stalkers kit. I like the look of them, and they fit with the Dark Techno legs. What I've done here is I've arranged 2 on one side and 1 on the other, to give them a lopsided, strange appearance, like a mad science experiment gone wrong. For a head, I grabbed another one from the Dark Techno kits that has these 6 eyes kind of like a spider. Spiders are a suitably creepy animal, so I decided that from now on, my Dark Mechanicum army is going to have some subtle spider theming to it. When you're making models like this, I always like to make a sort of line through the model. In this case, the line is made with the outstretched right arm meeting with the blade arm in a line that goes from mid-right to bottom left. This is something that takes a little bit of work to get done, and a lot of practice to get better at, but once you get it, it'll really improve the look of your models. I brought in a very evil-looking lava base for this guy, then joined all the parts of his model that touch the base together, and then cut the model using a Boolean difference modifier with that object. This makes a series of cuts in the base that the model can sit in once he's been printed. Right before I finished this model up, I decided to go back into edit mode and use the bisect tool to shorten his sword into a taser. Most people are much more afraid of being tortured than they are of actually dying, and so I think having the Dark Mechanicum grunts pack incapacitation weapons adds another layer of implied horror onto their purpose. After the final finishing touches were applied, and I gave him a nice one over, this guy was ready for his turn on my digital turntable. Once that first model was done, I decided it was time to make something larger. I used the driver and the legs from the Maker's Cult Isopodius set, and scaled them down to match the central groin piece of an Imperial Sentinel. Because this model has so many legs, which don't seem dynamic if they're all placed evenly, I next brought in the base. Then, I positioned each one of the legs in a way that seemed aesthetically pleasing for a sort of spider robot that's in motion. This is just a blockout, and we will come back to cover these exposed areas, which would have been covered by a joint on the Isopodius. I then grabbed a turret weapon from the same kit, before adding a searchlight from the Imperial Sentinel. The next step was to make it look more menacing. Spiders have a series of frontal mandibles that give them a very distinct look, so I grabbed the front claws from the Isopodius kit and scaled them to fit. Then, I positioned them in ways that seem natural and fluid, trying to get a sort of wave motion happening with where the claws are ending, to show the viewer that these are constantly slicing up and down, like a moving rock grinder or other piece of machinery you definitely do not want to get stuck in. Once the claws were done, it was time to come back to the legs and finish them once and for all. I grabbed this armor's piece/side skirt from the Imperial Sentinel and positioned it over the right legs in a position I liked. This takes a lot of rotating and doing over, so don't be afraid to take your time with this. Then, once I had a position I liked, I copied it with Ctrl-C, pasted it with Ctrl-V, dragged it over to the other side, and then set it to -1 on the x-axis to invert the part. This creates a perfect mirror of the part on that axis, and it's one of the big advantages of digital kitbashing. I'm about to put you onto some crazy game, homeboy, so listen close. Make a plane, position it over the area you want to cover, and make sure that it's still facing flush with the ground. Then, make 2 toruses and rotate them counter to one another so it looks like they're linked together. Join them as one object, then go into edit mode and use Alt-click and F to fill in the centers. Once your toruses are completed, go back to your plane and add a new hair emitter in your particle system. Set it to originate from vertices, turn off random generation, and make sure that you have object scale off. Also, set it to render as an object, and then as your source object, click on your toruses. This means that every single vertice on your object will be rendering as one of your source objects. Now, go in an edit mode, use Ctrl-S and scroll up or down on the mouse wheel to create more cuts in the model. This will set the amount of vertices you have, and also how many of these little chain links you have in your model, so make sure to do it a couple times if you don't like the first result. You can always go back and do it again, and until the final product is out, nothing's permanent. I then spend a non-insignificant amount of time moving these vertices around in order to make them conform to the shape of the model underneath. This isn't quite as easy as modeling with the modeling tools in Blender because you're just moving individual points, but if you have the time and effort, a little bit goes a long way. I also deleted some of the links more towards the bottom and sides of the model to make it look like they've rubbed off on the ground or been jummed up and eaten in the big mechanical sort of piston pieces that make up the legs. In real life, I think this would be a OSHA hazard so bad you'd probably get sent to The Hague, but in the 41st millennium, the words workplace safety advocate are probably a slur. I then finished the chain skirts for all sides of the model and made sure to give them a little bit of that modeling and texture work as well. Again, you don't have to go overboard on this, and a little bit of sway, especially at the bottom with something like this, makes it seem like you put a lot more work into it than you did. Once that was all done, and the model was given a final once-over, it was time to send it on to the digital turntable. Around this time in the video is where a lot of people would ask you to like the video and subscribe to my channel, because it really helps me do these. However, I'm not asking. You will like this video and subscribe to my channel, or I shall send my robot legions out to turn you and your loved ones into cyborg slaves working in my forges of despair. You will know only unending toil and constant misery. Your only relief shall be death, and even then I will dump your mangled body into the vats from which new creatures are spawned, so that you may still serve me. I really enjoyed this project. I managed to establish a basic design language for Dark Mechanicum forces, and you may have noticed I haven't used many explicitly fleshy chaos parts, which is very much intentional. I like this more hard mechanical side of the Dark Mechanicum, and I want to leave room for myself to get crazier and crazier with centerpiece models in the future. Today's music was done up by Archotechna, whose YouTube channel is criminally small for the quality of the work that he produces. You can get all his stuff on Ko-fi for free, so if you feel like donating, pop over there and give him a hand. He does great work. Thank you so much for coming and joining me on this episode. I hope you'll tune in for the next one, like the video, and subscribe to my channel, because it's what lets me keep doing these wonderful, fun experiments in the world of Warhammer. I was mostly joking about the whole sending the robot legions to turn you and your family into slaves thing, but if you did subscribe to the channel, maybe just don't answer the front door for a little while.